Hi, this is Jan Guarino, and you're in Fearless Watercolors. And tonight we are going to be doing a very famous scene of Montmartre in Paris, France, in a very different way. And if you look over my shoulder here, this is the style in which we're going to approach it. Is loose and suggestive, and it should be a lot of fun. So let me switch cameras. And here is the photo here. This is more where I'm going, maybe with the sky, I'm thinking, and just a lot of different ideas that I want to incorporate. And let me just bring this other painting a little bit more into focus, that this is the approach that I want to take with these buildings. I don't want them to get super crazy fussy. Of course, you guys can always add all of the details that you'd like to. My goal is going to be to keep it on the simpler side and not go too hogwash wild. It's going to be more in a silhouette fashion like this. So that's what I'm planning. And here's my palette. The water's ready to go. Have a water bottle, a spray bottle ready. I want to show you guys a spray bottle that I saw in a workshop that was different than I had seen before. And it is something that of course, I went out instantly and ordered it. It's this, it's what your hairdresser might use. And it sends off a nice stream of nice mist. I don't think it's any different than any other one that we have, but I thought I'd point it out to you. I like to show you my new toys as I get them. So the first thing I want to do is just get that sky really dramatic. It could be a sunset, which I really love painting sunsets. Sunsets are just so, or a sunrise. Sunrises are usually a little bit more muted. But what I'd like to do is have one area where you sort of know where the sun is, right? And all the colors sort of stream from that. So it's really color wheel, guys. It's going to be the white, certainly yellow. In this case, it was Quin Gold, to Quin Gold Deep, some pink in there, which is our Verzino Violet, and our violet. In this case, I think I used Imperial because it went so well with the pink. So that's what I'm thinking color-wise to do that. Down here was really a combination of various of colors. There are turquoises in here, there's violets and oranges. And I think that was pretty much what I did on the bottom here, with very, very little detail in each of the buildings. All of that just really simply melted away. And that's why I want you to have your spray bottle handy. So what we're going to do first is just do a clean sweep of a sky. Let's picture where our sunrise or our sun is going to be. And I'm thinking like right in this area right here would be kind of a nice area. So I'm just sort of putting a little circle around it, very, very light, not heavy at all. But I want to remember not to paint there. My mop brush, while it holds a lot of water, I can also hold a whole lot of paint. And so I'm going to go in and start with my Quin Gold and just sort of give myself that feeling of a circular area there. And with a smaller brush, what I want to do is just have that softly come in, just with a little bit of water. I want it to softly move into the center part. That sun looks a little large, so I'm just going to go a little bit smaller. Yeah. That's going to be nice. And in between these buildings here, we're going to have to keep this super wet, right, for it to work. And I'm going to switch to my Quin Gold Deep. And now everybody's just going to really make their own sunset. Okay, that's really how this is going to go. So that's my Quin Gold Deep, which has a little bit more orange in it. And really, guys, there's no reason for us to even save our buildings. I'm talking about going right through your buildings because we're going to build them way darker. That is my Quin Gold Deep. If you want to add a little bit of orange to it, certainly that's using color wheel to your benefit. Go right through everything because all these little windows and everything are just going to show through. And just color, color, color. Don't really have to save anything here at all. Now, as you get further away, you're going to definitely have more of your less color and a little bit cooler. So while this is wet, it might be nice to add some streaks to your color there, right? And while we're doing that, this is just watercolor 101. Let your colors just sort of move for you and fill in as they will. If you add water, it will push the paint away and maybe create some streaks of clouds, let's say. And that is my Verzino Violet, which is so beautiful. It's such a great pink. So it becomes a little bit more colorful as it moves away from the sun. Think of a sunset. But, sunsets, we want to make it our own. So, and that's my violet moving away from the sun. That's my Imperial Violet. And invite these colors to sort of start moving together. So tilt your paper, have them run into each other, have them interact with each other. That's really the best part of doing a sky like this, because once you get this, you don't want to touch it. You don't want to go back into it. And I'm just going to be getting much cooler as I move away. So the right side is going to go really cool. And I'm not saving any buildings, really, because some of those windows may show through. So it might be nice to have the windows sort of popping through. You don't have to cut them out and think that they are, worry about any of that. You don't. If it's drying too fast, go ahead and hit it with a little bit of water with your spray bottle and let it all mingle together and let it paint itself for you. Let your sunset or sunrise or whatever it is sort of just unfold. If you lost your sun, just go in and just hit it with a little bit of water and it'll push it aside. That's my Quin Gold Deep. It's a pretty powerful color. If you add water, it's going to create the idea of a cloud. So in this case, I'm just sort of patient and I wait to see what's happening on the paper. And I'm trying not to overly control anything, just letting it be. Water will move it for you. So just make sure you're using enough water to have that happen, have all of that move for you. And don't have to save the building. And you could just see this sort of traveling across my paper. It's a little reflective, sorry about that, but it's just awesome, just moving into a softness. What you're going to try to do is spray it so that you don't end up with heavy streaks. That's going to be pretty important. We don't really want that. You don't want heavy streaks. You want it to be nice and soft and subtle. So if your brush is too small, you might get marks that will show up. And I'm just going to go right through all of this and not even save any of my buildings. Don't need to. I might add a little blue down in this corner here. It's sort of kind of far away from the sky. So this might be a nice place to add a little bit of blue. Maybe I'll just use a cool violet. Yeah, that'll cool it down nicely. And I'm watching where my paint is going. So that is a nice cool violet that I added into this lower corner here. Every time I do this, it always looks very different each time. It's just the way it is. Adding my water again in this area where the sun is to keep it really light. So you could just go in and roll your brush and just lift it off just so that it stays very light there. And the reason we could go through the buildings is because there are little windows in the buildings. And also remember our darks we're going to build. That's the idea, is we're going to build our darks. And I have some beautiful blossoms happening. There's a lot going on. I have little cloud blossoms happening. Hopefully you've got some nice stuff going on that you're able to really, but don't overjudge it and don't overwork it. As always, you know, it's these things that give us an opportunity to just be so painterly and so expressive. And who doesn't love a good sunset? Just saying. Yeah, that's really pretty. And you know what? This is not the star. The buildings will be the star because we're going to throw them completely in silhouette. But we are going to want to dry this before we go any further. So I would recommend, before we get into any of the building, that you dry your paper pretty thoroughly. Look at this blossom I have going on there. This interaction of these colors are just so beautiful. And it's really because I just let it, you know, I let them be, you know. If you want to get any kind of a cloud, you could just go in with a smaller brush and you could just add like a little bit of water, and it's going to push the color aside and create these beautiful, soft sky clouds. Beautiful. But it may happen on its own. Like that just kind of happened on its own, that one. This one here happened on its own. This one happened on its own. It's almost like it'll, well, I know I say it all the time. If you let it, it will paint. Watercolors will paint for you. And it's true. While it's wet, it's a really good time to add the colors that you feel you want in your sunset. Nothing's like a good sunset. And when you see it, you'll be like, oh, I should paint that. But really, you know, it's almost like creating your own is much more fun. You are your own master. I am going to pause this and I'm going to dry this because I can't go any further. And I think I have plenty of color in my sky. And I really don't want to do any more. The rest is going to be happening because of the shapes of the buildings. Okay, so as long as you're pretty dry, and it is, what we're going to do is treat all of these buildings as one piece. So you can go in and add water and then just let it sort of do. What we're not going to do is paint individual parts of this building. I know it's one building, but for now, let's just add one stream of consciousness straight across, okay? And the colors that I'm going to use, keep your bottom of the buildings very soft, like really watercolor 101. Just blend that right in, and do not have it be something that you need to have a hard edge. Get rid of that edge right away. So the colors I'm going to use is a violet. I'm going to use a blue, and I think like a phthalo blue is a really nice, or a phthalo turquoise is really fun to use, and orange or quin gold. Those are going to be the three colors that I'm going to put along the bottom here. And I'm going in, and again, keeping that bottom, whether you spray it or however you want to do it, to keep it pretty moist along the bottom. And what you're going to do is find all of the beautiful little details of the architecture. We're not going to go into doing the architecture quite yet. We're going to do that at another time. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just keep going through all of this with my brush, okay? With my brush, with my colors, all the colors, and I'm going to let them all mingle. Now, I will tell you that when I get over here where my sun is, I'm going to lose that edge. I'm not really going to paint that edge very much. I'm going to let it, as if the sun is sort of blocking it out. That's what how I'm going to approach that. And you might want to pre-mix these colors. I'm not. I like the idea of how they appear on the page. And I'm going to keep my bottom very wet, just with spraying it with a little bit of water, so that these colors just sort of start trickling in. You can add a little bit of indigo. That's a great color to add in here too. Makes it feel very silhouette-y. Pay attention to the shapes that are on the architecture, okay? You want to pay really close attention to that, because that will matter. And if you think that there's a little window that maybe you want to show through, nobody's really going to say, oh, wait, I've been there to Montmartre and the windows don't show through. Nobody's really going to say that to you. So for instance, if I wanted to have a little window popping through, so be it. You know, I'm not doing an artistic architectural rendering here. That's not my purpose of doing this. But pay very, very close attention to all of the edges that you're going to want to keep. That's going to be the important part. And your bottom of this should be very soft and very wet, okay? Those are the two things I'm going to tell you to make sure you do, okay? I'll back out and just show you how that I'm approaching this. Really just dropping in colors. And of course, it's all the colors that make me so happy. And if these colors don't do it for you, find colors that do. It doesn't matter. It does not have to be my vision. Make it your own. I'm using about a number 10 brush right now. And really, I just have a little bit of color on my brush that's giving me just enough. And we're going to separate the buildings later. That is not really what I want to be doing right now. Have the colors swirl around and have some fun with this. Whew. If you want to add a little bit of your orangey, beautiful gold just to that left side of the building, just to give it a little bit of a glow, like I just did right there, go right ahead, do that. It's as if the sun is kissing it. Make sure you're adding enough color that you will not have to go back in and do this again. So if you have to go back and add some more color to any areas that maybe aren't dark enough, do it in the moment. Don't wait. The steeples will do last. Oh boy, is that fun. If your paint is collecting on the bottom too much, just take a tissue and just, let it sort of come right off, right? Just let it capture and move right off. Get some indigo in there to really give it a nice, deep, dark color too. The colors are great. The indigo is really good. Bring everything up just enough so that it's starting to indicate the steeple and the crosses on top and all of that beautiful stuff that we'll go in and do that detail in a bit. And you'll notice from the drawing that I gave you that I did separate the buildings out a little bit. I didn't keep them all as close as all of the pieces of the steeples and the domes were. I separated them a little bit. And I did that on purpose, of course. And I did that just so that we would be able to have some fun with all of the different domes coming up. So there's a lot to keep track of on this all at the same time. For sure. And keep little windows open. That's fun. These little dome windows are great. If you put a little bit of water on the bottom of it and let it drip back up, that's kind of fun too. You get some beautiful marks that way. As long as it's wet, you can pretty much move around the painting as you want to. And of course, with the purple and the Quin Gold touch, well, that's going to tone everything down a little bit. But if you add a little bit of your phthalo, that will spark it back up. So it's sort of back and forth kind of thing. Just make sure your colors are mixing. And if they're not, move it around so that they do. Where you give it water, it's definitely going to follow suit and move for you. And I'm really not separating the buildings. They're just all sort of coming together. In one big mass of beautifulness. So the trick is not to have it look too streaky where you see too many different colors going on. If you see that happening, you may just want to go back in and add a little bit more other colors just so that it mixes a little bit. Again, where you give it water, it will totally move into that. And if you add water to the bottom, it's going to push all your colors up. That's why I don't like working flat. I like to have the control of where I want things to happen and be and whatnot. I get why people work on an angle. It's I just like personally to have the control more on my end. That phthalo blue turquoise is just gorgeous. And then just a little bit of indigo to tone it all down a little bit. I don't really think you can see through these windows, but I like that we can see through ours. It's our painting. We get to do what we want. This got a little lighter than I wanted, so I'm just going to go in and darken it before it dries. Keep an eye on it, on these pieces, so that you can control that kind of depth of color that you're going to be adding, right? You want to be sure that it's going dark enough, because we really don't want to go back in and do this again. So this is the crux of the painting right here. This is it. So make yourself really, really happy with this. It's like a take your time, but go fast. It's like a little bit of a combination of both of those thoughts. Like you need to move quickly with them, but but you also need to have it be, all connected and whatnot. And I think that should do that pretty good. So I'm just going to, now that the whole thing is wet, and just going to go in and drop in more color. Because it's all super wet, but I don't want areas drying too dark. Too light. I want them to be dark enough. So going in and handling some of that now, that's my job now, is to just go in and make sure I have enough color everywhere. And you could see where I've charged it up more and where it might need a little bit more charging. Now, there's something I want to show you. I'm going to just make sure I have enough color everywhere. I think it's down here. I need a little bit more. But I don't want the color going to the edges. So I'm going to put it upside down. And I'm going to hit a couple of spots with water and let it travel up. It'll give you that mysterious kind of floating bottom that I had showed you earlier. The other thing you could do is take your brush and just lightly lift a little bit off of it, just to keep some of this. Oh, and you know what? I apologize. I usually put my other, I don't even know where it is right now. I usually been keeping a dirty cloth there so you could see where I'm wiping it. I have no idea where that went to. Oh, well, I'll look for it later. So some of these areas, you may just want to have it be light and take your brush and just wipe it. This is my drying mat. I'm sorry you can't see that, but just lightly, not everywhere and not evenly done, just in certain areas, which will give you the opportunity to sort of go darker in other spots. So I could see going a little darker here because I went light there. By the way, that little gold popping there, oh my goodness, it's like gorgeous. Just like the perfect spot. Sometimes you get lucky. I don't know if anybody would actually recognize as Montmartre, but I don't really care. That is not my intention to make this like, oh, I know where this is. I've been there. That's not the purpose of why I want to paint this. So think about that. You know, if you want it to be recognizable and, you know, representational, that's a different way of looking at it. I'm not worried about that in the least. Little tricky. I know it's tricky getting all around and making sure that you keep everything charged up with color, and yet the color is mixing. All of that's really important to this process. It's a little, but it's speed. It definitely takes on a lot of speed, and because that's what ends up happening when we paint this way is right. The speed helps us. And I, always like to ask the question, how much more do you need on your painting to say what this is and why you painted it? I know what it is, and I could tell you why we're painting this. I know why you're attracted to it. I know why I'm attracted to it. So I just blew that kind of dome. So I'm just going to fix this over here. These edges really matter. Now, I am going to take one of my flat angled brushes with clean water, and I'm just going to have this sun, like literally, let me go closer and show you what I'm doing. I'm just having this part of the sun and the building. I don't know why I've got that blue in there. It's just being annoying. There's no blue. I'm not sure why. My water isn't as clean as I thought. Just want that one section to go really very, very soft, as if the sun rays are coming right through it. Little tissue, lift it up a little bit, and see how it just feels like that part of the building is just wiped out by the sun. I knew I would paint this one day. I just didn't know how I was going to go about it. You can see all that wetness going on. I want to add a little bit more color right in here. So I'm just going to use all my colors and just drip it down. I do have little holidays in here that kind of just, I don't know, they just kind of stuck around. So I'm going with them. But I don't want to push with my brush. I hit it with my water. I got green in there. I don't know that I want green. Let me tone that down. I'm going to go in and add some violet. Wasn't really planning on green. That's just traveling up, right up into there, making a nice deep dark color on the dome. What you can do by letting it flow itself instead of pushing it with your brush will really change your painting in a big way. It'll look very loose, and it'll look very untampered with. It'll have a very fresh feel to it. I've never done it, but I've know people who have like pour their paintings, their color on their paintings, and it's kind of like that. But I think this is a much more interesting way to let paint move on your paper, is to just let it be. I think I'm going to stop right there. Actually, no, I apologize. I'm just going to finish this little edge right here. I don't want it to end right there. So just give it a little bit of a right there. And that angle looks a little weird, although I do see it in the photo. Maybe a little bit more color in here. Okay. Give your painting what you think it needs, what you see that it needs.
So I basically used to create this, just a few colors, my phthalo turquoise, my Quin Gold Deep, and a violet, along with some indigo. The indigo is just sort of there to help tone it down and give it a lot of oomph, a lot of contrast. Be careful if you go into any areas that you want to repaint or add a little bit more color, that you're not disturbing what's there too much. Gently, go in really gently. And I think now's a good time to just pause and let it rest and let it dry. And, you know, I'm itching to do those steeples. That's the most fun for me. And I will exaggerate them, but that's where we're at so far. And by the way, if I didn't mention it, this is 300-pound Arches hot press, my favorite paper to use. I love it. So, yeah, I think now's a good time for me to just let it rest. So this is all like still pretty damp and wet and whatnot. What I want to do is I want to turn my painting upside down, and I want to use my rigger. This is curling ever so slightly. I just want to get rid of that little curl. It's going to interfere with what I'm looking to do next, which is, and if you have to practice this on a scrap piece of paper before you do it, absolutely go and practice getting a nice, I'll show you, a nice, even, thin mark. If you can't really get that, here's just a scrap piece of paper. If you can't really get a nice thin mark, it's something to practice. It's just something that you keep practicing. My hand's getting caught up over here. And this is just palette mud, which you can achieve. Now, notice that I'm not doing this, okay, with my brush. I'm taking my hand and my brush, I'm locking it together, and I'm pulling it towards me. So that's how I do my steeples. Are they perfect? Absolutely not. Am I going to use a ruler? I absolutely am not using a ruler. So let me get these brushes out of the way. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, the ones that are in the sunlight here, I'm going to use more of my orangey color. Okay, maybe a little bit of my Quin Gold. So I'm pulling a little Quin Gold out of my, here it is here. You want it to be pretty dark. So if you pull it out of the well, you want it to be very little water, just enough water to move it, really. And so what I'm going to do is from the top of the steeple, let's start over here, and I'm going to pull it up. And actually, this is an interesting thing too that you could think about, is you don't even really have to connect everything. Let me go closer. I'll show you what I'm doing. So here I am here all the way on the, what's actually the left side. Okay, it's the left side, but I'm upside down because I want to pull this towards me. And this is where you want a nice fine mark. And you don't even have to connect it. You can do what I call a little Morse code, you know, just a little dots and dashes. And maybe there's crosses here, so maybe we'll add the crosses in a minute. I want to get the right angle to do that. And as we get away from our sunlight, it will get a little deeper and darker. So as we move away, maybe you'll use your violet, maybe you'll use a little bit of blue. You know, you could find sort of a color that helps you to indicate that things are sort of coming apart away from the buildings a little bit. And if anybody says to you, I don't know, those little steeple tops are not in Montmartre, you're just going to look at them with a very like staring and say, really? I saw them. It's just not important. It's for the effect. That's really what we're going for here. Getting that nice thin mark is really what we're looking for here. And if it's not even entirely connected, and there you have them. And now they are all at an angle, right? Because we're looking at Montmartre on an angle. So you can actually add some of the crosses if you wanted to. Because there's a little cross on each one, but I made them a whole lot taller than they really are. And so, sue me. That's what I wanted to do. And if they're a little crooked, this one's going a little crooked, it's a painting, If you want the photo, look at the photo. But if you want something way more interesting than a photo, just look at this. This is where we're taking a photo and we're making it our own. Okay, that is my rigor. Now, the other thing that I really want to do is I'd like the idea of some of this architecture, maybe a hint of some windows. So what I would have ready are all of your angled flat brushes, because I'm not sure what size I'm going to need. So I have a 3/8, a 1/2 inch, I have a 1/4 inch here, I have 2/4, and then I have a, what is this? Maybe it's a 3/4. I just kind of have them all ready to go, because depending on the mark that I want to make, and I'll show you what I mean. So maybe I want to indicate a little bit of, and I still see my pencil marks here, a little bit of architecture, and maybe a little hint of a arched window. I always keep my number 10 here to be able to, I might not be able to get that mark with the number 10, but I could, feather it out. So some of these kinds of shapes, and that, is really where I want to go next. Now, see, it doesn't work the same as the flat. Somehow that just gives me the right thing. And then I just spread it using a little bit of water. Now, how crazy you get with this is really going to be your own decision. Remember that we can always do architecture also. If you're not good with the brush and straight lines, we have the option of using our pieces of cut paper. Okay, so the pieces of cut paper, I'll just show you how I use that. And these are all just 300 pieces of old paintings that didn't work out and whatever, that I use now in helping me with architecture. So I'll paint the top of it and I will stamp it basically. So I could go in and say, oh, there's a angle there, and start making some of these suggestions with your paper. You can also use these in an interesting way. Again, if you're not good with using your brush like this, I'll show you. If you want to get some of those arches in, you can use it just to hit like a little bit of a
little taps, right? Let's say we wanted to go in and get some of these arches that are across there. This is still pretty wet, but what I would do is I would match up a piece of paper or cut a piece of paper to be the width that I need, which I think is like this size here. And I could go in and paint this tip, and I can go in and I really lost a lot of my marks, I have to say. Oops. All right, well, that didn't come out quite the way I would hoped. So I'll go on with my brush and go in and give it a little bit of help. But it does create a really nice mark. I'm going to try that again. I think because my paper is buckled a little bit here, it didn't really take. So I'm going to try that again. I'll go a little closer for you guys. Let's see, where am I? Here I am. Okay. So I want to put another one of these right over here, up, around, and down. Didn't have enough paint on it, but that's the idea. Actually, it doesn't look so bad, but I'll do it again. And this, practice this also before you go on your painting and do it. Down, up and around. It's missing because it's buckling right there. So I'll fill it in with a little brush mark. Kind of against the reason why I'm showing this to you, but there's more than one way to do this. I think I'll just have to wait for it to dry. And that's timing, right? That's just watercolor timing. It's not working. Okay, fine. Just a little suggestion of the windows. Again, how much of this you do is really going to be entirely your decision and your choice about all of this. Now I'll show you another nice trick. If something is curved, you could take your paper and you can curve it, right? And then paint the edge and get some nice curvature. If you're not good with your brush mark. So you kind of got that curve. If you want to separate one part of a building from another, this is a little wet here, so I'm not sure I'll be able to do it, but I could try. It's still a little damp right here. I just lifted that a little bit. And if I wanted to, I could paint behind it, the building, the larger dome. Lots of ways to work this architectural stuff. If you want to put, I'm using these to paint on the edges here. I'm going to try some 140 paper. Usually I use 300. But that 140 worked pretty good. And they don't have to be heavy duty marks. They can be very light and very suggestive, just like I'm showing you.
We have not been hired by the Vatican to paint this, or whoever it is, not the Vatican. You know what I'm saying. This is just to make us happy. That's all it is. And that little bit of suggestion of the architecture is really all we need to do the job here. I do want to go in here and actually suggest that arch right here with the statue in that. I think that was really, really a fun little spot there. So I'm going to go in and try to find my marks. They're really lost, but so I'll go by my photo if I can't find my mark. So the cool part about these flat brushes is that you could use these to stamp also. They do give you a little opportunity to just add a little stamp to them. And how much of this you do will be totally up to each individual. And they don't even have to be that dark, really just a suggestion of it. And it feels like there's a statue in there. Very subtle, really not a whole lot going on. So now we can think about, if we wanted to, separating one building from the next here and there. So the big spot to me is like right here. That seems to be the main spot that I would think of doing this on my painting. You may have a different, sort of vision of how you want to do this. But to me, that right there is sort of the right spot to just indicate that a little bit. Of course, here, some little marks. So if I went in with this, probably would do it. So the windows are, and when they face us, it's pretty much full. But as they go around, they get thinner. And if some of those marks melt, so much the better. I like it. I could keep going and going and going. I don't think it's going to really lend anything more to the painting than what I've done. And of course, there's just a time to let it rest and see what else, it might need.
in a little bit. You don't have to do it all in the moment. So you can let it, sort of talk to you. Just such beautiful things. And we made it a whole different thing than what it was, which is really, really cool. I really wanted to show that to you. And I really wanted you to have that experience of interpreting, right? Shifting things around and making them a little bit more dynamic, interesting, or just your vision. I'm going to let this rest for a bit and just see what else it might need. I don't really know that it needs anything else, or that or that I'm going to get anything more out of it than what I have here. What I have here, I feel, is what I sought out to achieve. So if it's, and look, I just want to point out that if you got any of these blossoms in the background, look now and say, who's looking at those, right? You're looking here. You're telling the eye where to look. And all of these work towards supplementing exactly where you want the viewer's eye to go. So that's why whenever I do a painting, I wait to see what is going to happen with the blossoms. You can remove blossoms, and there is a way to do it, and it's not difficult. But so often I find that I'm happy that I got blossoms, and I'm even happier that I left them in and didn't think, oh, it's ruined. I need to remove them. Like I don't really like to think of any of that while I'm in the process of painting. I could think about it later and say, do I find it distracting? Do I feel like it is necessary? I can ask all those questions later on, but we can always remove them. We can't put them back in. Once they're gone, you're not going to work your sky again. That's done. What I want to point out to you guys is these areas that just kind of the sun just is so strong that you really don't see the building. I think that's a really important part, and how the golden color is sort of hinted on the left side of the buildings that are on the right side, and on the right side of the buildings that are on the left side. So I wanted to point that out to you also. And this did what I wanted it to do. And of course, the whole reason to do it for me was those little open windows and the steeples, which we exaggerated and we made even more than they were. So can you keep going with the architecture? Absolutely true. You could. I'm going to stop right here. I think that's where I want to be. So I hope that you learned a new idea on how to go about doing architecture. It could be very dramatic. It could be a silhouette, and it does not have to get fussy at all. You could just take your time and go into all these little minutia details if you'd like, or just suggest them. That's where your style comes in. And so I thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you had a good time. I hope you try it. If you don't feel it's a success, just try it again. It takes practice, how much water, how much paint, how you move it. But remember, I'm very into letting the paint move and letting the paint for me. in its water. That's the key for me with watercolors. So until next time, Jan Guarino, Fearless Watercolors. I'll see you again. Bye now.